Right, well, hello and welcome everybody to this meeting of the Cabinet on Wednesday, the 22nd of January, coming to you from the Town Hall. First of all, apologies for absence. I am not aware of any apologies for absence. Brenda, I should just check with you, sir. No, thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Not seeing any. There have been, there is an address, a question by a member of the public, but they are unable to attend. So we will publish it on our website along with our response, but it is in relation to the item on the agenda about the redesignation of the Neighbourhood Forum for Headington. Just raising some concerns about that, which I'm sure we will pick up when we cover that item. There are no council addresses on any item for decision on the Cabinet agenda notified, or on neighbourhood issues, nor on items raised by Cabinet members. So we are now on to scrutiny reports. And Catherine, I can see you online, so welcome and over to you.
Thank you very much, Susan. So the Scrutiny Committee met on the 14th of January and we considered 5 substantive items: the Council of Sanctuary Framework, the HRA rent setting report for 25-26, the withdrawal of the local plan, 2014 approval of the local development scheme 2025 to 2030. And I should add on that it was more a focus on the local development scheme document. Then the flood management was a topic, and governance changes to address the increase in urgent key decisions, which was a trend that we'd recently observed. And I, as scrutiny, have to approve some of those, and so had requested that went to the agenda. In total, we had 11 recommendations that were presented over these different topic areas. So turning first then to the Council of Sanctuary Framework, I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Smith, Neris Parry, Richard Wood and Stephen Cohen for all their work and attending as well for that. We acknowledged and thanked them for their work in developing a bold vision in this area and achieving the accreditation. Some of the measures and objectives were discussed, and there were some queries around data collection, KPIs, so key performance indicators, and how to measure progress. There was some discussion also about barriers to learning English and the lack of tutors in this area and challenges with accessibility of this learning. And there was some discussion around the wider contextual challenges with the anti-migrant violence that has occurred since this report was first developed, and some of the changing policy environment that we're operating in. There was also reference to the needs assessment that informed some of this work, which wasn't public at the time. And of the 4 recommendations that were made by scrutiny, one of which was to make this publicly available. There were also recommendations that referred to increasing information around this context, as I mentioned. And so that was something that members wanted to see, and also working around developing the key performance indicators and addressing some of the anti-migrant violence in some of the documents by adding some preventative measures around addressing this issue. I'll pause on this agenda item to see if you've got any response to that, because I understand not all of the recommendations have been approved on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I can see there's some very detailed responses from Councillor Smith. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you. Yeah, there's detailed responses there which have been published. And the recommendations about developing KPIs and metrics to measure progress, yes, we've taken that on board. We're happy to accept that. The same with publishing the needs assessment. That will be done. The 2 which haven't been accepted, we feel, I mean, they're about, what they're asking for is sort of references to future changes. And we feel that the document really does what it's being asked to do at the moment. I mean, the report before us this evening does include a recommendation to delegate powers, delegate authority to update the action plan going forward. So it will be updated as changes happen, either sort of in society or in terms of the policy environment.
Very much.
Thank you. Back to you, Catherine.
Thank you. So then turning to the HRA rent setting report, and again, Councillor Smith, this was an agenda item that you attended on, and also Neris and Jason Jones. So thanks to all of you for that. We discussed the rationale behind the percentage increase in garages exceeding the CPI +1. So that was sort of a big focus of the discussion. There was some concern around whether there's a need for more dynamic pricing, about the impact of limiting this charge to CPI +1. And then there was also a bit of debate as to whether or not we need to consider the impact of the price changes on the private rental market and sort of the connection between the two. So there were made two recommendations on this, and I think one of which was suggested in response to the concerns raised, which was that officers include a model of the impact of limiting the garage charge increases in the final report that's presented to Cabinet, and that is, I think, before us, before you today, and then also in the future iterations of the report, there's a section reflecting on the trends in the broader private rental market, so that can be there as a comparison to what the council house changes are. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. Over to you again. Such a detailed response on this one. It's actually got a graph in it, which is really exciting. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, both the recommendations have been accepted. I mean, perhaps it's worth just putting on record that, you know, I don't believe a modest increase in council house rents that we're proposing this evening will have any impact at all on the unacceptably high rents we see in the private rented sector in the city.
Thanks very much, Linda. Catherine, back to you.
Yeah, so we also talked about flood management, and this report was a scrutiny commissioned report following the events in November. They weren't the only flooding events that were touched on in the discussion, and I'd like to really thank, there were a number of people who were there, Richard Adams, who prepared the presentation, and also Councillor Railton, James Barlow and Andy Brett from the County Council, who also provided really thorough answers to the questions. And we discussed lots of topics. I won't go through all of them, but some of the logistical challenges of pump deployment, whether there's adequate equipment in the city, clarity around responsibilities for maintaining infrastructure and the relationship between all of the different agencies. There were 3 recommendations that came about through this around communication, also between both the agencies and residents, so everyone knows, you know, where to direct concerns. Given the wider climate change context where we're seeing increased flooding, there were some concerns about ensuring that there's adequate reserves that the council has available to draw on to fund the emergency response measures as well. So there's a recommendation around that. So 2 communications and 1 around the reserves. So I'll hand back to you for the response. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. And Councillor Railton, Anna, over on you. Where are you? Oh, there. Sorry, lost you on the round. Just trying to work out where you are around the table. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Catherine. Yes, so the one about reserves, the recommendation was agreed with. That's fine, and the other 2 were partially, though I think the second one is pretty much mostly. So the first one around flood investigations. So the recommendation was for sharing with ward councillors when flood investigations are triggered, and we have sort of said we'll do that when they're published, because they actually could take quite a long time, and so it's more useful to find out when they actually come out. The second one was around guidance for members, residents, that sort of thing around flood preparedness and stuff. So there is a leaflet coming out imminently. It might actually have started going through doors, but yeah, I will take it as an action on myself to review, well, and actually come up with some decent advice for ward members around comms and things. So no, thank you very much. It was a useful discussion.
And before you come back in, Councillor Miles, Ed Turner, Councillor Turner wants to speak as well.
Yeah, it's probably a very uninteresting contribution for any member of the public here, but I was just looking at Anna's response on the second one. It just said for general flooding queries, members should submit using the members' inquiry form. That obviously makes a lot of sense. And to escalate more urgent issues, members should do so via the portfolio holder, who can then escalate in regular fortnightly meetings. I understand the response, and I imagine what Anna, for you, Chair, what Anna's sort of saying helpfully is to escalate something, be in touch with me. Don't just run a members' inquiry form. I wouldn't want a default of contact making the cabinet member the point of call for urgent issues. I think we have a named senior officer at weekends, out of hours, and probably we just need to reiterate that point to members as well. I wouldn't want sort of mixed messages there if it's about the sort of urgency rather than about the general inter-organisational mechanism. Memo itself, probably also not a bad moment to touch base on how the member inquiry form is working, but we'll take that one offline, shall we?
Thank you very much, Ed. Catherine, back to you.
Thank you very much. So just in terms of the governance changes to address the increase in urgent key decisions, Emma Jackman, thank you very much for attending and also addressing this. And I know a lot of work has gone on to sort of address some of the concerns around this increased number that have been taken. We heard about and noted that the measures that are ongoing now to address this, and they're being put in place, and they're really strengthening the governance across the council and also the council-owned companies. So, for instance, the mandatory training being delivered to staff and continued compliance as well around that, how to maintain that. With the context for this, there were a couple of recommendations that came out. One was not only to continue some of the actions that are in the plan that haven't been addressed yet, so because they will be important to continue to mitigate this increased number of decisions, but also that an end of year report is presented to the scrutiny committee, which reports the number and the nature of these different urgent decisions. And so it can include data to track the trends and evaluate the distinctions between those that were unavoidable and those that were related to capacity, and so that a discussion can be made at the scrutiny meeting, and then there's full transparency where these decisions have been made. I should note, it was reiterated at scrutiny that these decisions do go to full council, so they are reviewed there as well. But it's just good to have a look at the aggregate number, and that was why that recommendation was put forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I think this one comes to me to respond to on behalf of Cabinet, and just to note that essentially the first recommendation is the recommendation of the report, and scrutiny endorsing it, as I am fairly confident we will shortly as well. But the second one is a kind of newer amendment to the report, effectively asking for an end of year report, and I think that was one which we were also very happy to endorse.
Thank you. So there was one final point that was discussed. There wasn't a formal recommendation that fell from it, but it was with respect to the withdrawal of the Oxford local plan and the improvement of the local development scheme, which I think is before you today. So thank you to Councillor Upton and Rachel Williams and Sarah Harrison for attending on that point. There were questions related to this. We focused the discussion around the local development plan document and the impact of the reorganisation, the local devolution proposals, and how that might affect the local plan, the implications of extending the end date, which was now set to 2042, and also whether there will be any impact on the review of neighbourhood plans as a result of these alterations. The committee did note with regret that the unfortunate need to withdraw the local plan, but because we were focusing on the document before us around the process, then we agreed to endorse the officer recommendations as set out in the report, and there were no further recommendations. Happy to take any questions if there's any clarification needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Louise, do you want to respond at all? No, I don't think there's anything to add at this point. So thank you very much, as always, Catherine, for the work of the Scrutiny Committee. We appreciate the thorough approach that you take. And as you can see, we've, I hope, been pretty thorough in our responses as well. So thank you very much. As always, you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting and hear how we deal with the reports, or to leave as you see fit. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are now on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Council of Sanctuary Framework 2025 to 2028. And I believe I'm handing over to Councillor Smith to introduce this. And I'm assuming this is Stephen Cohen. Yes. So thank you both very much. And I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. I'm delighted that we've been awarded Local Authority of Sanctuary accreditation for our work to help those fleeing global conflicts and persecution. The accreditation recognises our work to help refugees and asylum seekers adjust to life in Oxford, as well as provide them with the language and skills needed to help the city's economy. And this evening, we're being asked to agree a 3-year action plan to support the accreditation. This aims to empower local community and voluntary groups to provide much of the support, and this cabinet paper does not request any new funding at all to support the Local Authority of Sanctuary status or the 3-year action plan. Oxford has a long history of welcoming people from around the world, including those seeking a place of sanctuary. And since 2015, this council has resettled 58 refugee families that have arrived through government-backed resettlement schemes. And we're committed to resettling a further 8 families every year for the next 5 years. This accreditation and action plan provides recognition of this and a solid platform for building a city where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and contribute to our community and our local economy. And yeah, Stephen is here to provide more detail about the action plan if colleagues want it, and to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. Stephen, would you like to add anything? Sorry, can you just put your mic on?
Sorry, no, that was a good introduction. I don't think there's anything to add.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, apart from anything else, for all your work on this. I know this has not been an easy thing to achieve, and it's long been the ambition of this council to become a city of sanctuary, or to officially become a city of sanctuary, as I think we feel that we have been for, well, centuries really. But I think that the official status is really important to us, and so this is a milestone report from our perspective. Are there any questions or comments? Sorry, Linda.
Just before we agree the report, I would like to thank Stephen and his team for all the work on this. I think it's obvious to anybody that reads it how much work has gone into it, including the level of engagement with local stakeholders and the local community. It's really impressive and something I think we're all proud of as a cabinet. So thank you so much.
Hear, hear. Any questions or comments? No. Okay, well, nice and easy in the end. It's just all the work that went into to getting it here in the first place. So, in which case, can I put the recommendations to the vote, which are to approve and adopt the Council of Sanctuary Framework, agree an annual progress update, and delegate power to amend the design without changing the content as needed. So, is everyone happy to support those recommendations? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 9, which is the HRA rent setting report. And we're again over to Councillor Smith for this, although this report's also got your name on it as well, Ed. So I don't know whether you were intending to address yourself to it as well. And if we've got Jason Jones. He's online. He is, yes, as well. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, the report tonight recommends a rise of 2.7% in our council rents and service charges for the next financial year. This is a rise 1% above inflation. Cabinet colleagues will know from previous recent reports before us, which covered the financial health of our housing revenue account, that there is a need to maximise income into HRA in order to properly fund our housing services. Future demands on the HRA include meeting tough new regulatory requirements on safety and tenant involvement. We need to invest in our council homes to keep them up to standard and improve energy efficiency. We need to continue providing landlord services and responding to repairs in a way which keeps our tenants highly satisfied with the service they're getting. And we need to invest in building and buying more of the affordable homes desperately needed in Oxford to provide homes for local people and support the inclusive growth of our city. So if any are listening, my message to tenants this evening is that I'm very sorry that the rents need to rise at all, and that we need to put them up, but I hope that they will understand the reasons and agree with me that our council rents still represent terrific value for money, coming out even after this rise at an average of only £133.68 per week. And with that in mind, I hope we can agree with this report this evening.
Thank you very much, Linda. Jason, did you want to add anything? Or Neris, sorry, I can see Neris is online too. So
Nothing to add from me, thank you.
Nothing for me either.
thank you, Neris. And Ed, did you want to add anything?
I'll keep my powder dry for the appropriation report later.
Ooh, okay. Has anyone got any questions or comments? Okay, well, I would echo Linda's assessment of this report, which is that it is a modest rise and a necessary rise, and obviously also share her views that you know, we're sorry that we have to have any rise, but actually we do, if we're going to actually look after tenants' properties in the way that we would aspire to, and make sure that we have got the ability to build more and acquire more, then it is necessary to put in modest increases, and that is what this is. So, and as you quite rightly say, Linda, very good value for money still, particularly compared, as we saw in this splendid graph, compared to private rents in the city, which are sadly really sky high, and continuing to rise at really quite unacceptable levels. So just making the case even more for the need for affordable housing and council housing. Okay, well, if no one's got any other questions or comments, then can we move to the recommendations, which are to approve the increase and follow all the other recommendations in the report, which are basically that increase. They're all about the different increases that we need to approve. So is everyone happy to show their support for that recommendation, those recommendations? Thank you very much. That is carried. We are therefore now on to item 10, which is the withdrawal of the Oxford Local Plan 2040 and approval of the Local Development Scheme 2025 to 2030. And Louise and officers are all here to talk to us about this. So Louise, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Susan. So the withdrawal of the Oxford Local Plan 2040, we didn't want to be here doing this, but we are where we are. The planning inspectors have asked us to withdraw our Local Plan 2040, and although we profoundly disagree with their reasons, I think we would agree that the only sensible option now is to do what they ask and withdraw it. So this paper simply sets out the timeline for that process. Now, given that a large amount of work went into creating the 2040 plan, huge amounts of evidence gathered and used, I think this sort of reset will be very light touch. But nonetheless, it is a chance to review and update it. And just so yesterday, I went to the Oxfordshire Schools Sustainability Network event, which was just children from, also teenagers, young people from Cheney and Charwell and Magdalen College School, I think, who were focusing on housing, and they had come together with coming up with lots of really interesting ideas about, you know, about getting more housing, but also they were thinking about things like, how do you get good community within that? How do you look after nature while you're doing that? You know, they talked about, let's have more allotments, let's, you know, zero carbon homes. So I was just very heartwarming that lots of these young people were having some really good ideas and thinking about complex things and not just doing it on Minecraft. So all of that made me feel like it's just very frustrating. Our LP Local Plan 2040 has been delayed because we had loads of really good stuff in it about zero carbon homes and things like that. But as I said, this is perhaps a slight chance, well, a chance to improve it, perhaps, if we think there's anything we can improve in it. The second part of the paper is the changes to the SIL charging schedule, which was supposed to be being examined alongside our local plan. The planning inspector has been unable to find us an inspector to do that yet. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that just for SIL charging, you can actually find your own inspector somewhere else and do it sort of almost privately, if you like. So we are going to do that because basically every month that we have not got the new SIL charging schedule in place, we will be charging much lower rates to business planning permission approvals that we give than we could. So we will be, you know, we're forfeiting possible SIL receipts the longer we don't have this. So I hope you'll all agree that we, and it's coming to this because it was a council decision to send it to the planning inspectorate. So am I right, was it going to council as well? You have to do this, or was it just cabinet? No, just for the sill bit.
Sorry, the sill bit
Yeah.
is just coming to cabinet.
Just come, thank you, sorry. Yeah, the sill bit's just, so just because we had said we send it to the planning inspectorate, I need you all to agree that we're happy to send it to the person that Rachel has found, who's ready to go, I think. Anyway, so I hope that's enough. The timetable is set out in the report. It's going to be almost probably a 2-year delay, which is really disappointing and annoying, but there we are. We're doing it as fast as we can.
Thank you very much, Louise. And I note the planners of the future, which who we should be probably encouraging to take up planning as a career, because we know there are not enough good planners. We've got some brilliant ones here at Oxford City, but we want even more. So David and Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Thank you, and they'll be welcome to join our well-established apprenticeship scheme that we have, and we'll plug that later. Yes, as Councillor Upton explained, in our local development scheme, we've got a very ambitious timeline to go out for 2 rounds of consultation on our revised local plan. The first will be in June, July, a Reg 18 consultation, and the document explains a little bit about that. So we will move as rapidly as we can to submit a new and robust plan that will provide the homes that our citizens need. Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. Just the LDS is not going to council, just to note. And yes, it is, once it's withdrawn, it essentially isn't there, even though it will be. Technically it isn't. So we have to go through all the processes to make sure that we get it right and that it's sound when it goes back to examination. So we've tried to make the timetable as quick as possible, but whilst making sure that we have enough time to do those processes properly.
Thank you. Alex.
First of all, I wasn't planning to say this, but I will have to now because of the mention of apprenticeships and having spent the day meeting planning apprentices as my job. I declare that I have an interest in training planning apprentices, but not the ones belonging to Oxford City Council, as far as I'm aware. Okay, so I don't have a conflicted issue. In terms of 2 comments, completely agree with what's been said about the frustration of the decision by the inspector to form what I think is blatantly wrong judgment about the 2040 plan and the need to speed up and get the SIL schemes implemented, because there is potential for people to be making a very substantial profit's not quite the right word, but a very substantial discount on the SIL they should be paying as a result. So the quicker we get that done, the better. The question I had was about the LDS, particularly Appendix 1, the Gantt chart of the LDS and the timings which are in it. So this is probably what was covered in scrutiny. I just wanted to make sure I've understood it right. So the Regulation 18 consultation is down beginning in June of this year. So the first question is, will that Regulation 18 documents go through Cabinet, or they're going to be just published without having to go through Cabinet? And if Cabinet, which Cabinet specifically? Because there isn't, well, it'd be interesting to know which one you're aiming for. And the second question following on from that is, obviously there's a load of material which exists, and I completely support the point about needing to keep the material that was developed for the 2040 plan, so we don't have to go back to the beginning and on those kinds of research projects. So I just wanted to get a sense of what elements of adjustment rather than change are being considered in this quite tight timescale. For example, an issue which comes up to quite a lot of us, issues in our conservation areas and the need to reflect to environmental changes in a different way to the way we've currently been doing that. So whether that's solar panels or electrical vehicle or bicycle charging, things like that. So those are the kinds of things. Are we going to be able to pick those up in this quite tight timescale, or is that going to be outside?
Okay.
Sarah? Yep.
The intention is to go, the regulation 18 will need to go to cabinet, and the intention, I think there's one on the 12th or the 11th of June. That was what we're aiming for. We've got a very detailed timetable up to that point. So the consultation will start towards the end of June and run for the 6 weeks right to the end of July. And there is quite a lot of points starting pretty much from now, once the plan is withdrawn at council on Monday, to meet with people and discuss our previous sets of options and policies and see what does need adjusting. We have factored in enough time to think about where we need to change things. We've already done that review ourselves to a point, but we need to get involvement of others to make sure that we're not missing anything. But yes, there is time to do that.
Thank you very much. I think I would only add my own disappointment at the inspector's decision and surprise, which we have, I think, made fairly clear over the last couple of months. It is disappointing that we are here, but we are, and so we need to make sure that we get the right plans and policies in place as quickly as possible, so that we can make sure that there are decisions being made in the right way in the city, and that the policies that have been democratically put forward and consulted on and engaged with are then able to be implemented, and we don't end up in a situation where developers have some kind of free-for-all. That's the whole purpose of having a good local plan that has been consulted on. So, has anyone got any further questions or comments? No, in which case, can we please agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Thank you very much. We are next item on the agenda, item 11, onto the item which is the redesignation of the Neighbourhood Forum for Headington. And this is the item on which we did receive an address, which I think Louise at least has seen a copy of, I hope. And I'm not sure whether it's gone round to all cabinet members. The essence of the representation that was made to us was that a level of concern about the governance arrangements of the Neighbourhood Forum, particularly when dealing with sort of SIL payments and so on, which I think is not a matter that's actually in front of us, but is I would suggest a matter of some concern. So, but I will leave Louise to both respond to that and to introduce the report.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Yes, so this one is simply about the redesignation of an existing forum, neighbourhood forum. Neighbourhood forums are slightly odd things in that they formed when a group of residents get together to say they want to do one, and they can set their own boundaries, and they have to fulfil quite a lot of rules and regulations. There's criteria they have to fulfill in order to do that, but nobody gets elected onto them. So they are rather odd like that. And they do have quite a lot of money to spend because they get a proportion of the SIL receipts from planning applications in that area. So this particular one, the Headington Neighbourhood Forum, was first set up in 2014. And every 5 years you have to redesignate it. And this is really just setting out the geographical area that it covers. And they have applied to be redesignated, and they have fulfilled all of the criteria that they need to in order to do that. So we will be, or I'm recommending that we allow this redesignation to happen. I do understand how people can be upset about how the neighbourhood forum operates. If they're not part of the resident group that is running the neighbourhood forum, for example. But there's very few levers, if any, that the city council has to intervene in how they spend their SIL receipts. But that said, our officers here do work with all the neighbourhood forums with regards to governance and other sort of SIL-related matters. So we will ensure that the feedback or from the address that was given to us, we will make sure that's relayed to Headington Neighbourhood Forum. But there's not an awful lot more we can do about that, I'm afraid. Anyway, but that's what the report, that's what so the address we had relates to this report. But I think the report itself is probably quite straightforward.
Thank you. And Arome, did you want to add anything?
No, nothing more than Louisa said now.
Thank you. I mean, just on the governance issues, if I may, it is open to the Headington Neighbourhood Forum to apply again to become a parish or community council. As in fairness, they did previously, and the vote was not clear. And in the end, we therefore chose not to designate them as a parish or community council. But if they wished to approach the council again to ask to become one, that is something that we could consider, and would at least make the governance a little more accountable. As I said, that isn't something that is before us in a report, but I think it is something that we could feed back to the Neighbourhood Forum alongside the response to the address. So I'm just touching on it because we have had the address covering that aspect of it. And just finally on the subject of governance and the neighbourhood forums, we have a couple of neighbourhood forums in the city with local plans neighbourhood plans, I should beg your pardon, sorry. We have in the past tried to engage with them and invite them along to our meetings with parish councils, and that's had some success, but it hasn't really. They haven't really continued to engage in that way, which is a shame. But we can always try again. Are there any further comments or questions on this report? I think, as Louise said, it's a fairly self-explanatory report, and I think no, in which case, can we agree the recommendation, which is to approve the redesignation of the Headington Neighbourhood Forum in respect to the originally designated neighbourhood area to which it is related? Thank you very much. We are now on to item 12, and thank you very much to Sarah and to you for your work on this. We're now on to the archive scanning project, which is who? Sorry, Nigel.
Yes, it's a report from the Head of Planning and Regulatory Services to ask for a release of almost £1 million to both sort of winnow out and catalogue and then scan thousands of documents that we have presently residing in the basement of the town hall and also in the town hall flat. And obviously, if they could be moved from the paper age to the digital age, that would be very helpful, but it would release space for other uses. It would also, phase one is about cataloguing. So it's about sorting out what do we really need to keep and what can we get rid of. And say phase two is then about digitizing them in a sensible way. So it's pretty straightforward, this. The other issue is actually that, you don't want all that paper sitting in the basement, really. It's not very sensible in terms of fire risk. So obviously, if they were scanned and digitized, that fire risk would go away. So the money is in the budget. It's a very clear paper. Thank you very much, both of you, for that. And I ask for its support from the Cabinet.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, all the hands are popping up. But before you all sort of quickly stick your hands in the air, Nathan, David, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, thanks for the introduction, Councillor Chapman. I think you covered most of it. The only thing I'd add was the benefit of doing the cataloguing process is also to ensure that we comply with relevant retention schedule as well as GDPR to make sure we're not holding on to information we shouldn't be.
Thanks, Nathan. Good point. Right, I think I saw Lubna and then Alex.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think it'll be an interesting process. I've seen how much documentation is present, and good luck.
I think that is quite helpful. Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, you're in dangerous territory here because, of course, I detest the getting rid of any single document ever because it's part of our heritage. And it's a serious point about previous efforts at doing this. Anyone who's looked at any old planning documents which are available online will realise that I would say 95% of them, it was the front page letter only that was scanned. So there's whole huge quantities of documentation. Lots of it fairly of negligible importance, but there's lots which is really key. So, for example, the plan that the City Council came up with to fundamentally redesign the whole of Jericho, which is one of the most controversial planning applications we ever had in front of us, I would say, back in the 1960s. There's one document and it should be the whole file. So the thing that we want to make sure is that whichever contractor we use, we ensure that we do not allow them to do what was done then, which was the front page to be photographed badly, not scanned properly, not recorded properly, and then the whole thing binned, because that would be an unsatisfactory outcome, which I think would upset quite a lot of people interested in the history of this city.
Thanks, Alex. And Linda.
Yeah, my point was almost the same as Alex's, really. It's just I hope that sort of critical human eye will be cast over everything, so that anything that is of note, of historical interest, you know, any interesting maps, diagrams, etc., will be kept in paper form. And will it actually be disposed of, or will it go off site to a dungeon somewhere? Or will it be totally disposed of once it's scanned?
Before you respond, I've got one more. Ed.
Yeah, there's some interesting stories about former council archives, former councillors who adopted documents when they were chucked out, but I'll save those for a different occasion. Mine was actually completely different to the other points. So it's good to have such a good discussion on this one. It was about just on, I suppose, on the financial implications, but the wider bit. I mean, this report doesn't address and doesn't need to address the kind of future use. But of course, the good thing is this will free up space in the town hall. You know, this is an amazing building, and having even the most inaccessible nooks and crannies just full of old files is a waste. It's a waste in terms of sort of energy and space, but also opportunity in using the space and ultimately cost as well, because we, you know, might one way or another bring an income stream for it, or we might reduce expenditure elsewhere. So, you know, I know there's work, of course, which is ongoing, looking at the future shape of the town hall, but I don't see this just as a digitalisation project. I also see it as something which potentially will lead to a more effective use of this very precious resource in a way which may benefit the council's organisation, but also our finances.
Thank you, Ed. Nathan, over to you.
I think I get the boring scanning questions and Nathan gets the exciting future questions. So part of the phase one, the idea of doing phase one, and it's officers going down there and sorting out what's going to be scanned. So I'll have planning officers down there going through the planning files and making sure we're retaining the right documents. When we've done that cataloguing, that'll be passed wholesale to the scanning contractor to scan everything we give them. So that'll avoid just the front page issues or other scanning issues that I've experienced in other places. The intention is to only retain physical copies where we are obliged to retain physical copies, which is very few documents. So, for example, all the planning documents, when scanned and quality checked, would be destroyed confidentially. Obviously, storing them anywhere else for ultimately for an infinite amount of time has a significant cost implication. So we're not proposing that. We're proposing to confidentially destroy once we're satisfied we have an accurate and good digital copy. Nathan.
And yeah, just on the last point, yeah, so as you've identified, there's a ongoing piece of work to look at the future of the building, which I'm coincidentally running as well. So I yeah, definitely see the opportunity of making better use of this amazing building.
Yeah, Nigel.
I mean, I think, Tom, it's fair to say that we're expecting to look at some proposals reasonably soon. Of course, it'll be in my diary anyway. I remember to be briefed on phase 2 of the town hall project. So it must be getting close to the point where it can be scrutinised and shared.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think it will be coming to cabinet anytime soon, but I think what we'll be doing is developing the brief, and then we will be looking to engage both with members more broadly and also staff and users. So that will be an essential part, but we'll obviously be working through with you on all of that.
Yeah. So just to make that clear, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just say that storing things digitally does still have an environmental and other cost, as a financial cost as well. You know, it's not entirely sort of happy. Well, I mean, it is obviously there's happier than having mounds of paper, but you know, there are still energy costs and financial costs in storing documents online. However, well, I suppose I should have guessed that the archive scanning, knowing councillors' ability to be very interested in history has actually generated the most debate. But thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Thank you for the report. I think we can probably move to the vote now on this, which is, where are they? To approve the request for the release of £999,500 from the Town Hall Works Fund to complete the archive scanning project, and delegate to the Executive Director, in consultation with Councillor Chapman and the Head of Finance and the Head of Law and Governance, the authority to enter into any contracts necessary to undertake the project. So are we happy to agree that? Thank you very much. We are now on to, and thank you very much, both of you. We're now on to item 13, which is 38 to 40 George Street Regeneration Project appropriation, and over to Ed for this one.
Thanks. It's a very important project, but probably not the most important staging post. But you'll be aware, of course, of the redevelopment at 38 to 40 George Street, one which will be of great benefit to the city, with a new apartment hotel, a new community focused space working with MakeSpace, a new opening up a lot of frontage, which at the moment is pretty dead. Which I think will really breathe new life into Gloucester Green as well. So it's a good project. It's very important in any such projects that you have clean title of the land, that you make sure that all of the necessary consents are in place, so that development can be pursued expeditiously and without any sort of issues, legal, that sort of thing, and that you can just carry on. And we always look carefully to make sure that such provisions are in place. In this case, we're proposing to make an appropriation of some land which is marked so it can be held for planning purposes. And that's the recommendation here. And we'd like to exercise our powers yet to do that. There's a confidential appendix which says a bit more. We could have a debate on the confidential appendix if we go into confidential session, but obviously can't do so now. But I'm sure members will have taken it on board, and I'm sort of happy not to talk to it and simply to move to recommendations unless people want to debate it.
Can I check with Cabinet? Does anyone want to move into confidential session to discuss the confidential aspects of the report? I'm not seeing anyone indicate that, therefore I'm not proposing to do so. I can see both Jane and Carrie online. Did either of you want to add anything?
I think I'm very pleased that Ed kept his Councillor Turner kept his powder dry. I don't think we don't need to add anything to that.
No, that's fine.
Okay, well, thank you both very much. Are there any questions or comments on this? No, I mean, I feel we've had a fair bit of discussion about this project already. It's just the next stage, really. Can I therefore move us to the recommendations, which are to approve the exercise of the council's powers to appropriate, etc. Everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. Excellent. We now move on to item 14, which is fleet procurement of RCVs and top loaders. And this is a report from the monitoring officer. Emma?
Sorry, I couldn't find my buttons. They're not working. I'm trying to get my camera on. Bear with me. There we go.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Councillor Brown. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so this report concerns a transaction that was entered into in relation to the purchase and fleet for ODS. Owing to a number of technical issues and oversights, the fact that ODS don't ordinarily procure in the council's name, there were some governance processes on the council's part that were missed, which basically meant that we entered into a contract which hadn't been through cabinet, but was a value that needed to be on cabinet and needed to be on the floor plan. We have addressed that. We've had a signed deed of termination from the contractor today. We're in the process of signing that from our part, so that will be set to one side. As a consequence, I did need to make cabinet aware, give you the background. The paper sets that out, some of the steps we're taking to address it. And in addition, the paper also then seeks authority to proceed and re-tender and re-let the contract, which is also in progress at the moment, so that we can get the fleet purchased for ODS because it is becoming business critical. So that's in general. I'm happy to go through some of the recommendations in more detail if you like, but that's essentially the nature of the report before cabinet today.
Thank you, Emma. I've certainly read them. I imagine other cabinet members have done so. Has anyone got any questions or comments?
Well,
Nigel.
a couple of comments. I mean, it's good that we caught it because obviously we weren't following process properly. So it's good we caught it before we finalised everything, and then, you know, we'd have to row it all entirely back 100%. Secondly, it's good to see there's going to be quite a lot of training and development work for officers, both in ODS and also in the council, around the whole procurement issue and how approvals flow through the council process to cabinet and wherever there's appropriate. So I was reassured, frankly, about that. So thank you very much for that. And we need to sort of, you know, get back on the horse, as it were, and get the procurement process going again, and you know, bring the matter to a head as fast as we can expeditiously. I'm also assured that the risks to the service, the refuse service, are low and they are being managed properly. So the fact that we can't get these vehicles in as fast as we would have liked, you know, I don't anticipate we're going to have any issues about collecting people's rubbish as a result of that. It's a very clear report. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emma. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So can we move to the recommendations which are set out in the report? And can we agree them?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was a yes, and from everybody. We are therefore on to the minutes, which are set out on pages 211 to 222. Can we agree them as an accurate record? Agreed. Thank you. And I therefore just need to point you to the dates of future meetings. The next meeting is on the 5th of February 2025. Thank you all very much for attending. I declare this meeting closed.